321 456. My little boy, he's 8 years old. He'll tell you the first 10 digits of pi, actually, now that I say that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Very
well,
good.
welcome. Welcome. I'm here with Steve Young, highly acclaimed and well-educated guy, PhD. He can tell us a little bit more about his credentials because I think that that's useful. But Steve we met recently at the Guru Gathering in Spain. And I had a brief chat with you, to be honest. And my wife had said to me almost a year ago, she said, you've got to listen to this guy, Steve Young. He's talking a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, but he's coming at it from like a highly academic, uh, baseline, and then using that intellect and academics to kind of reinforce. Now, people who may not know my work, I have been doing street activism for 8 years on flat Earth now, and one of the questions I get often asked is, well, what are you a scientist? What are your qualifications? Have you been to university? All these sorts of things, which I have to field. Something that perhaps is is maybe uncomfortable for you, but is you've got a really a drop dead kind of answer for guys and go, no, this is and I've listened to a number of your podcasts and conversations, fascinating stuff. Um, and then one of the other questions I get asked on the street is like, when people they're like, I've given them enough information and they're like, now it's like, okay, I can't hear any more information. And they'll say, why does it matter?
Mhm.
What's the point? So what? I still have to go to work tomorrow and that kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I would like to, because you have had some amazing conversations on the alchemical processes and your insight on that, and maybe some of that will come up. I think these things are so important. Uh, know thyself, care for thyself, and understand the processes of the world as they are. But it's what is the meaning of life and why are we here? What is the point of all of this deception? And that's kind of what I'd like to kind of hinge this conversation on today. Um, because at the end of the day, all the credentials and you know, all the money or all what fame or whatever, all of those things, they matter for very little at the end of the day when you're meeting your creator or having your final, re sort of audit of was this life, did it achieve what it was set out for? So, without further ado, would you like to just give us a little background? A lot of people will know you. Steve's got an awesome book. I haven't read it, but everyone who has read it says it's a phenomenal book, and I hope to read it in the fullness of time. But why don't you just give us a little bit about you?
Sure. Well, thanks for the introduction. I did a PhD in theoretical nuclear physics way back in the year 2000. The great millennium bug here
Mm.
was the year I started my PhD. So I did a master's before that. So from 96 to 2000, it was theoretical physics master's degree. And then from 2000 to 2004, um, nuclear physics, theoretical nuclear physics. Now, so that was 8 years of my life. Uh, all about physics and math, right? I was just like living and breathing
Nerdy,
physics and math.
nerdy.
Yeah, but also music because I had spare time as well, and I was going to parties and stuff. I was a student, so I was DJing and collecting music and learning music all at the same time as I was learning all about physics and the rest of it. So I've always had those two sort of threads in my life. Um, I'll admit, I mean, after I came out of my PhD, I mean, I was unemployed for 6 months. I had a real hard time getting a job, or just I was totally out of touch with reality, right? I didn't know anything about business or things that employers need and all this kind of stuff. I was just like I'd been so deep in this world of solving complex theoretical equations and running models and simulations and all that kind of stuff. I was not none of this stuff was really useful to the job market at the time. And so I had a bit of a crash coming out of it all, sort of realizing that, here I am thinking that I've got this like, high and mighty qualification in this like super advanced important subject. And now I'm hitting the ground and realizing that nobody actually needs it. No, I don't have skill. I don't have useful skills. Businesses are not working with nuclear physics or quantum physics. And Yeah, so for a lot of years I didn't really use. I mean, I would use Dr. Stephen Young, maybe if I was like applying for a
Oh,
bank
good
account
job.
or something. Do
Okay.
you know what I mean? I put doctor
Yeah.
on my bank card,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't put it. I didn't put it on my social media. And then I had a DJ name, Headflux, which that actually became the main thing that I was known for. And of course, some people knew I was a doctor, but most people didn't. They just saw me as a music artist.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, and then you know, years went on. I mean, I was doing the music full time. I went full time with music in 2010 after 5 years in the corporate world, and then I was doing research in the background, but that wasn't really my public facing role. I wasn't posting all my research. I wasn't talking about what I was discovering. My public role was just music. I was just releasing music, playing music, and had this music persona. Um, but yeah, but when it got to 2020, I mean, even then, like even with all the COVID stuff, so I started to feel then as well that like there was no point in, my doctorate meant nothing now, right? Because we thought a doctor was someone you could trust, right? And then with COVID, we realized, yeah, we can't. Yeah, being a doctor doesn't mean someone has discernment. It doesn't mean that they have honesty. It doesn't mean that they understand science. You know, COVID just blew it all out of the water and showed us that being a doctor actually doesn't mean you have any credibility at all. And so I felt even worse about my doctorate then. But I started writing this book, and I started thinking about the meaning of my titles, right? So doctor coming from the word docere, which means to teach, and you have philosophy, so PhD is philosophy doctorate. Philosophia is love of wisdom, so it's like teaching the love of wisdom, and I actually thought, you know what, this is what I really want to do. I love wisdom.
Yeah.
I love wisdom, the lessons of time that the smart people, the senior people have learned, the truths of this world and try to pass it on to us, and that's the wisdom. And I love that. So that kind of became the theme of the book, A
Mm.
Fool's
Mm.
Wisdom, recognizing that, I am myself a fool, like everyone who starts out on the spiritual journey. I was an ignorant fool, and I was actually a professional fool as well. So a DJ is, not too different from being a clown. Honestly, I mean, no disrespect to DJs, but you're up there on stage, like dancing around, and
Yes.
it's you spend a lot of time in circus tents as
Yes, I
well,
love that
that
term.
kind of thing.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah.
So recognizing that I was a fool, but that I'd also, been seeking wisdom my whole life, and I really felt like I got to a point with COVID where I actually had enough wisdom that I had something to say that was important, and so that's really what got me to write the book. And
I
um,
love that. Steve, I actually started this journey sort of 2014. Had published a book about my time in the Angolan War in 2013, and then I'd gotten some money to write a second book. And I started researching religious wars and try because I wanted to write a book on why religions kind of go to war with each other. And as I dug deeper, I was like, wow, I know nothing about how the world really works. I had a surface level idea of it. And like you, I bumped into ayahuasca in 2015, and that had kind of ripped the scab of the a lot of the kind of materialism that had clouded my vision because I'd become quite atheistic in my outlook on things, and I needed something like that to kind of refigure it. But we have to be I think one of the, because I've done street activism in Oxford and Cambridge a number of times, and some, around at other university sites. And one of the things that comes to mind is that we are all our our intellect is misappropriated, misguided, misdirected. So there's great intellect in the doctor. However, just like I say to people on the street, it's like a preacher of any religion that you don't agree with, or all of them that you don't agree with, all of them in the main are preaching from the heart in what they believe to be absolutely true. And they've applied their life, and they'll bring their children up in that same way, on the basis, in the same way as the doctors did with COVID, on the same way that they've been misaligned. So I'm with you on, I love the learning, but I'd kind of gotten tired of the learning because it was like, into my 40s, I was like, well, what's the point of this life? There's nothing more to learn. I'm watching the space nerds kind of go into deeper and deeper space and all of that. And they were taking me to Mars and all of these kinds of things, and all of it was always out and never inward.
Mhm.
And perhaps if inward in a way that is uh, meaningful. So I think, yes, the seeking of wisdom, but that wisdom to be rooted in reality. And what
Mhm.
I love about your work particularly is to do with like the alchemy and the the four principal elements seated within the ether. In our community, I say our community, in the flat earth discussion, over the years, I've seen some people kind of throw the ether away in our conversation. But for me, it has been for many years now, an absolute essential element of everything that's happening here. So perhaps you could kind of give us, if you don't mind, a little bit of your insight on ether and how it works.
Sure. Well, I'd heard about it briefly, I guess, some years ago. I didn't get taught about fire, earth, air, and water and ether in any official capacity. This was like something I discovered after university, and it's sort of portrayed as like primitive science, right? They'll be like fire, earth, air, and water. This is all the primitives, that's how they viewed it. But the more I started thinking about it, I'm like, God, this makes so much sense, and it reconnects science with the senses,
Hmm.
because I'd been working on science which was not within my sensory uh, range at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
And not, I mean, not even within the range of technology. I mean, you can't even, you can't see atoms under a microscope or anything, right?
Yep.
It's like it's way beyond. Like you're talking a million times smaller than a virus, which in a virus is said to be 1,000 times smaller than a bacterium, right? So you're going way, way down there.
Wow.
And yeah, anyway, so well, with the ether, what what started to like bring me more towards it, because initially I was just focused on the four elements. I wasn't thinking about the ether too much,
Okay.
but then I started to see just how what a conspiracy it was to actually get the ether out of science.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
you have the Michelson-Morley experiment,
Yeah.
and you have Einstein. And his whole approach, he was obviously involved with that, and there was just this sort of concerted effort to squeeze the ether out of
Hmm.
science at like about a century ago, beginning of the 1900s, and it's just shady when you actually look into it. Like, and it well, a few things I noticed. I noticed that the way they were talking before they squeezed the ether out, they were talking as if it was just a fact of reality. So it was basically like a commonly understood fact of reality to scientists before this, but
Yeah.
then they made a concerted effort to sort of debunk it and squeeze it out.
Yeah.
And
And turn it into air, maybe, like to say, oh, well, the ether's the air kind of thing. Some people make.
yeah, well, it's similar to air in its qualitativeness, in that it's a fluid that fills
Yeah.
space, but
Yeah.
it's like much like sort of thinner than air. But yeah, so and then I realized that, well, the ether actually provides a medium for spirituality to exist, right? And the whole thing with material modern science is they push all that out. No spirituality. So if you've had a spiritual experience, you're crazy. You were hallucinating. You're a fool, right? That's the scientific approach. Always has been. What, you saw a ghost? You're mad. You lost your mind. You
Yeah.
believe in God? You're a fool. You're an idiot, right? That has been the energy we get from science. Like anything spiritual, non-material, divine is considered stupid and beneath them.
I was around there about 12 years ago. I was probably Because the scientists that I was following, Hawking, Dawkins, all the Hawkins, I was following all these guys and listening to them and going, yeah, they're smart, man, and this makes much more sense.
Yeah, well, they're they
Maybe
might be
because
smart, but they're not pious, right? They
yeah,
they have no reverence or respect for
yeah,
the divine, and fair enough if you're agnostic, you're not sure, whatever, but these guys they have absolutely no reverence or respect for creation itself, and um, and we're they're like a priest class, but they're priests of a godless religion, which is based on atoms and atomism essentially. So I talk about this in my quantum theory stuff. Is the atom has replaced God. So rather than everything being created by God, now everything is created by atoms.
or Adam,
And Adam, yeah, from Adam to Adam, yeah, so atom to atom,
both
exactly.
of them,
So
yeah.
it's like we are
Sun and
atoms.
sun. Because I was listening to you talk on one
Yeah,
podcast, and I was like, yeah, of course, because Son of God and the sun in the sky are the same. So I think, and heliocentrism and atomism is to put the sun or at the center rather than Earth being at the center.
yeah, yeah.
Carry
And
on.
we are the Earth
Yes,
as well. So we're made from Earth. So it all puts the center, like really to us, the center is like our hearts, as it were. And
heart
uh,
is an anagram for Earth.
yeah, exactly. So this is the thing. It's a beautiful, elegant
Mm. Mm.
science. And I was taught this actually at university. Doing like mathematics and stuff. That there was this idea that like the true science would be beautiful and elegant, right? It's not the true science of nature is not going to be some like hideously complex, mathematical like equation, right? It's actually going to be something beautiful and true and simplistic. And yeah, so I kind of run with that. And so when I discovered alchemy and I started looking into its sort of formulation and foundation, I realized, wow, this is beautifully elegant. It explains everything, not just material stuff, but also the immaterial, the spiritual. And I think that's why it was kicked out. That's why they kicked the ether out, because it actually provides a scientific link
Mm.
between materialism and spirituality, as it is the medium in which spiritual phenomena take place. Because if you just have atoms in a vacuum, then you just have material and
Mm.
nothing.
Yeah,
It's just matter and nothing. Yeah.
yeah,
But when you have matter in ether,
yeah.
then yeah, you have a whole living substrate that
Yeah.
is for
I
spirituality.
describe it on the street. I describe it as a soup. That the ether
Yeah.
is like a soup, and we exist inside of the soup in which the four elements can propagate, without which nothing could exist, or nothing. But there would be no propagation of air, earth, water, fire without the medium of ether. And as I've heard you say it, which is fantastic for me because I've kind of um, a lot of this stuff, although I did spend a few months studying listening to the best professors on quantum physics in 2019. So I have like intuited a lot of this stuff just by, kind of thinking it out. And so this idea that the ether is actually moving through us as though we're not even there. I've heard you say that, and I'm like, wow, that's exactly what I feel, that it's that it, it permeates everything. It is the soup in which everything is suspended, if you like, or activated.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I think it moves through us. Well, the alchemists say that it penetrates all things.
Mm.
But it has, different sort of speed of penetration depending on the material that it's going through. So, for example, lead, right, being the densest of metals, the ether would go slowly through lead, right, but it would go more quickly through a human body, let's say.
Okay.
So, it has. What's the word I'm looking for? Maybe like a permeability. So, like materials have a certain permeability to the ether.
Mhm.
Ether will penetrate them all, but not at the same rate or at the same speed. So through that kind of process, you can get things like vortices and this kind of thing. Actually, there was a guy I met at the Guru Gathering was telling me about a system where they use tubes with lead in them on helicopters to create rain. They like
Mhm.
fly the helicopter into the ether wind,
Yeah.
with a tube with lead in it, and then it will create this kind of what's the word I'm looking for, like cavitation
Okay.
effect, which starts like
Okay.
condensation or something.
But
But
it's
yeah,
still
so
the
there's some technologies there that work with the ether. But again, we don't really hear about this stuff.
no, but
It's
I
not
have
convenient.
now that you mention the rain and the ether, I have this theory because there is this meme going around lately about, are these clouds holding millions of tons or liters of water at this moment in time, just suspended in sort of very misty kind of way, which I know when I've flown a plane through a cloud, I see some droplets forming on the window. So I know that there is a moisture in that collection of what we call cloud. But I'm also theorizing, and I only base this on my own thought process rather than any study, that what's happening inside of that is when we have the thunderstorm or we have the rainfall, is that there is a process, alchemical process occurring that is squeezing, I'm using the term squeezing, but it's wringing water out of the ether. In the same way as we could say, well, my beer glass on a hot day is going to suck water out of the air, we would say, but out of the but for this one, it has to be a process in my mind where the ether is being altered, which might explain how mud floods occur. And all of a sudden, it has because what I say to people is that the ether has the potential to be all four or a combination of the four. It is all.
Mhm.
It is everything. It is like you say, the consciousness. It is maybe the akashic. It's everything is in that medium, and then that medium can be just with a little bit of alchemical process. Psh, now you see something else, and I've created a little rainfall on my desk, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah, I mean, one of my kids asked me a few years ago, we were talking about flat Earth and gravity and stuff like that. And she was like, why don't the clouds just fall out of the sky, right? Like water's really heavy, and it's like, yeah, water is really heavy, and it's just sat up there, you know, just moving around as if it has like no weight whatsoever.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a hard question to answer, but yeah, I think it is like what you're saying. It's like sort of the condition of the ether, either like the pressure or the movement or something, but like creates that sort of impetus to condense and
Yeah.
fall from the sky. But somehow it's able to just float around up there, under the influence of gravity.
And then all of a sudden, just in a moment, it'll just go. I mean, you've probably been, if you lived in Hawaii, you've been in some maybe tropical rainstorm. It's like, what an amount of water is just coming all of a sudden out of the sky.
Yeah,
You're telling me that just that amount of water was just like in very misty thing in that little cloud, and now it's just torrent.
yeah,
So I'm
bumping.
starting to wonder whether it's a switch. There's a like, and if you can apply that electrical kind of thing, which is maybe how they do weather modification, is they're applying a charge or something like the lead
Hmm.
to complete the alchemical process.
Yeah, well, so when you break it down to the elements, right, and then you obviously got the four elements, but then you look at their combinations. So
Yeah.
like start adding them together. So like earth and water, you've got the downward pointing triangles, right? They both have, so because they both go down.
Feminine.
You have earth and water together, right? You have like double down, right? Like that's
Yeah.
like condensation. It's
Yeah.
something is coming from a spiritual form into a material form. That's like the double down. But then you've got like double up, which is like fire and air.
Hmm.
So like with a hot air balloon, for example, you've got the fire and the air, and then it lifts you straight up. But so fire and air combined is gas, essentially. It's like expansion. So,
Yes.
so fire and air combined is expansion. Water and earth combined is condensation or coagulation, contraction. Um, and so, and the fire, earth, air, and water are not just substances; they're qualities. And so the ether, so water can have fieriness, and
Yeah.
fire can have wateriness, and earth can have wateriness. You have like watery earth could be something like oil, like
Hmm.
crude
Hmm.
oil or sand. Sand, you can pour it like liquid, right? You can pour
Yeah.
it into a mold, it will take the shape of the mold. It's still dry earth,
Yeah.
but it moves like a
Yeah.
fluid. So
Yeah.
when you start mixing the qualities of the elements together, yeah, you can see how a lot of these other things form and fit that kind of idea of like the elements added together.
Can I just ask, just to double back on this? Just wanted to say, because people who don't know you won't know that you have children. and you're home
Uh-huh.
educating your children. Is that right?
Yeah, yes, yeah.
How many children do you have, Steve?
Three.
Oh, congratulations. I have three too. My older two went through university. It was only when my daughter was doing her A level in history that I started challenging the history stories, and that really caused a lot of disturbance over the dinner table because she was already 15.
Hmm.
Whereas my younger son now, who I called my flat Earth baby, and he came along in 2017, much later down the line. Um, we've taken the same approach, which is to educate him ourselves, to a point where maybe I said to him the other day, I'm talking to this guy, Steve. Now, my my son loves tiny numbers, Planck lengths, and stuff like that. He loves all of that. And we were just this morning, I think we were talking about astronomical units and so on. And we were talking about that because I want him to know what the science is on in the various camps, if you like. And I know that a lot of what he listens to on science is predicated in the science that you've started to say that's not all correct, right? So I was telling them that because when he hears it coming from someone else other than me, because he knows that I'm banging on about everything not being true, it would be awesome. So eventually, I'm hoping sometime that I will get him to listen to your insights on that. So
Yeah.
I commend you for the home educating. I think we are meant to rate our own children. We have the we have the we have the ability. I think sadly, sometimes people will say to me in the street, like, I'm not a science, they referring to themselves, I'm not a scientist. And I'm going, you are a scientist. Have you never tested hot water? Have you never, like, gone near
Yeah.
something or seen it cook? Or like you say about making the tea, have you never done these things? You are, and you've been made to feel like you're not smart enough because you haven't got a PhD or you haven't got a doctorate or you didn't, and I think for a lot of people who go through school, a lot of people that I've met in the truth community, um, which makes you fairly unique. But a lot of us were like, feeling like this is bollocks. We're not, at some point, we're not gelling with what the system is giving us.
Mm.
Me, I was like embarrassed by my school teacher at age 11 or 10 for saying, listen, miss, swinging the bucket over your head with water in it on a rope does not equate to this theory of gravity. It's not enough to say that because you're now using physical things, having discussed. It's like the guys who say to me, like, "Oh, so have you never been on a?" I say the Earth is not spinning. The atmosphere would be ripping around. And have you never been on a plane? They'll say, "Well, I'm like, that's a capsule, right? You're giving one closed and one open system as your argument." And then with my preachers in church, I'd go. Your Bible's so out of date because the Bible's talking all about an non-moving, stationary earth with a firmament and all these things. So I'd mock the science class and the biblical class because none of them were making sense to me. So I think we should be educating our own, but we have been made to feel like we're not able or capable or smart enough to educate our own.
Yeah. Well, we'd planned to home educate sort of from the get-go. So from our first child, it was sort of on and off. She went into nursery for a bit and she went into primary one. But then when we moved out of the UK, went to the US, and then so we were in the US for like 2.5 years, and we home educated the whole time she was there. And we had other children that they weren't really of school age yet. But then we came back here in 2018, and we had just so much stuff to do, like just dealing with coming back to Scotland after 20 years away. I thought, well, let's just put them in school, and we put our two daughters in school in 2019, and then of course 2020 rolled around, and we were like, right, get out of there, you ain't ever
The
going back. Like that is
universe has got a message for us. Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
So they have one school photograph that's quite funny, and they
Okay.
all look like zombies. They look so sick. They're like pale white. They're just like in their one and only school photograph. They've never looked more unhealthy.
Right.
And I remember they were. It's so hard to talk to when they were at school. They would come back from school, and you'd be like, "How was school?" And they'd be like, "Good." You know what I mean? And you'd just be like, what happened? What did you, what did you say? They were just like zombies while they were at
Yeah.
school. And and we're like, this is not good. And then of course when the school announced they were gonna lock people down and parents weren't going to be allowed on the grounds and they might have to lock down the school if if someone tests positive and there's going to be plastic sheets and the teachers are wearing masks and I'm just like, no freaking way, you ain't ever going back to globe school. I
Well
call it
done.
globe school. I'm like, what, why would I send my kids to globe school when I just spent the last 10 years, looking into all this and discovering that it was nonsense. And so, yeah, so the COVID was, to really got us to take the kids out of school and realize that we can't ever put them back. It's just gotten worse since then. I mean, we know teachers, we got friends who are in school. I mean, I've never heard a good story about anything that's happened in the school. I mean, the stuff we hear is shocking. Like the way the teachers' hands are completely tied now. They can't discipline children anyway. So the most, toxic, like crazy kids basically rule the, the classroom now. Whatever they say that determines what happens. Yeah, teachers getting water thrown at them like every day and stuff, and they can't do anything about it. I mean,
What
uh,
age are we talking about for
but
that?
this is secondary. Yeah.
Right, 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 right. Yeah.
So yeah, this is our local secondary. Now, my mother-in-law, she worked in a school near Edinburgh, and yeah, she was like a substitute teacher, and I mean, the stories she was coming away with were just like absolutely shocking. I mean, yeah, so I'm glad my kids are not in school now, and they know about flat Earth because they were born into it. We started getting into it about 10 years ago. So yeah, but I teach them about, got to teach them both, right? That's the way to do it. Is like not to like fully, obviously you don't want to fully indoctrinate them in the globe, and then they're gonna have to go through all this all the same shit that we went through. But
Yeah.
you want to just show them both,
Yes.
and say, well, this is what they teach us, and this is what I've discovered, and this is, and I think that, it's working. They have a good grasp of things. But yeah, I haven't gone like really deep into the physics with them yet, although I'm starting to look into that stuff with my eldest right now. But I try
It'll
to keep
come
it on
naturally.
an
Yeah,
intuitive level, that
exactly.
they can understand.
Exactly. I think, and children are like sponges. I mean, if at the right time, the right information, they're willing to kind of take that on, particularly if they're not being kind of forced to do it for 6 hours a day, sit still, which is hard for boys, sit still, you only got 7 out of 10, that's not as good enough. And Johnny over there got 10 out of 10, so you're not that smart kind of thing. So no, I think in the fullness of time, and yes, it's like what I'm mindful of extremism, where we can kind of take on all this truth stuff and become quite extreme about, you can never see that stuff over on the other side, and you can never touch this, you never do that. And I think we need to experience these things. And of course, if your children are going to have intelligent discussions with friends and peers and stuff as they get on or get older, then they're going to need to know both sides of the conversation. And yeah, and I think I spoke to a what they call a cover teacher, like your mum, just 2 weeks ago, and she said, I have some of the most awful days. She's a 60-odd-year-old lady, and she says, I have some of the most awful days. There's two or three children in the class who I can't do anything about, and they completely wreck it for the majority. Um, the biggest criticism, the biggest sort of downside, I mean, I think my son would sit well against any child, in terms of the reading and the writing and so on at his skill level. He may not be as artistic as some, he may be a bit more than others, but um, what I feel like he will get is, like child-centered, a little bit Steiner, but child-centered pace. His pace. I'll listen to him. I put a little video up the other day of him talking about the amount that the Americans spend on their military and how many times it could solve world hunger. And then like he comes out with, and the world economy is 900 trillion, which is almost a quadrillion. And that could solve world hunger 5,000 times or 2,000. He worked it out in his head, on the go. But I realize when I'm watching him, sometimes he needs me to give him 10 seconds to work out what he's going to say next. and then he will come out with it. But when I was in class, I never had that 10 seconds. I had to kind of have an answer immediately rather than having my time to kind of cogitate on these things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And I'm not super like pushy with the education on my kids. I mean, we sit with them every day. We do different things, art but it's not like super academic, like, do like 5 pages of like math problems and stuff. I
No,
mean,
we
they got their basic math in, but,
yeah,
I'm not pushy
yeah,
with
we
the
don't even have
math.
a timetable. We don't have
It,
a timetable. It's a day by day thing, for us because
yeah,
we've been traveling for 6 years, most of his life, and we've
yeah,
been in more than 150, 200 different places. We've moved a lot, so we don't have that opportunity to be like, okay, well, at 10 o'clock we'll sit down for 2 hours or whatever.
yeah.
And the thing is that we find time to do these things. Um, Although children like a little bit of routine and structure, I totally get that. But
Hmm.
they have the ability to learn by just being immersed in it. So if you're doing art with them, music with them, they're learning all of the things they need to learn.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they're learning a lot. They're learning every day. And I think, well, one of the things that's kind of happened with COVID and like the Great Awakening and stuff like that is a lot of us have realized that like the way we were educated did not prepare us for the world we were going to inherit, essentially. And I think this is it with the kids now, right? Because of what you've got internet, AI, all these things, all these problems. Like, is that the education that we had is not actually that suitable for them in the world that they're about to inherit.
Mm.
And we're kind of in this like transition time, and it's hard to know. That's one of the things my worries as a parent is like I'm like, what the hell are my kids' future is going to be? It seems like every opportunity is just being like, taken away. It's getting harder and harder to live in a country like the UK. I'm like, what are my kids going to do in the future? But I'm just like, I just want them to have a solid root as children with a happy life, with a happy family where they feel secure and safe and good memories of their upbringing. I think that's really important. And I want them to know about authenticity, how to be authentic, like how to be of value, how to create things with your computer, because the computer is actually a great gift. It's like we can use this wonderful tool to liberate ourselves and to make things of value for other people. And
Yeah.
that's why my life wouldn't be, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for the computer. I saw the computer was this tool of liberation that enabled me to like quit the 9 to 5
Yeah.
and follow what it is I love to do and just try to be of value to the world. And so I'm trying to raise my kids in that paradigm rather than oh, you have to go to school and get all the best grades so that you can get a job working for, Google or or something. It's just like
Yeah.
I'm not going to push them down that road. It's
Yeah. Well, because you must have seen that you put 10 years plus into deep academics, and then you come out the back end of that, and it's not significantly practical, although it's given you some skill sets and so on, but it's not significantly practical. Whereas, if you have a great spirit, then and a great energy, then you could pretty much walk into anything that you want to do. And I think that when your nervous system is in a better state of regulation, um, your likelihood of producing your best work, your best writing, your best art, your best music, these things are far more likely than when I have put you under significant amounts of pressure. I love using the example of puppies in a cage. On the street, I'll say to people, if I was to have 10 puppies in a cage and put three puppies worth of food in every day, what is going to happen to those puppies? They are not going to be balanced dogs as adults. And I think that that's what's happened to mankind is that we've been ripped out of our balance and harmony, and it all comes down to the sine wave. It all comes down to frequency and energy. We've been ripped out of that natural balance, and so we do not create. Our creator powers have been subjugated, fluoriding and all sorts of other things. They've been subjugating our potential because we are, I believe, the creator here, and we are meant to bring about beautiful music, bring about beautiful children and creation and so on. We're meant to do those things. But yes, we have to be in the world, if not of the world. And so I think that same with my son. I want him to, he's, going to be taking on Python soon, learn coding in Python. He's been using the other one that came out of MIT, Scratch. Um, and so I want him to have that. But, yesterday we're touching mushrooms and hugging trees and, being involved in nature in a very close and personal way, because my we don't know. But my wife and I, we talk about, Andrew and I, we talk about the bifurcation, which is biblical, hey, the splitting of the technocracy versus the more natural kind of thing. And so if I was to offer my children a future with Deloitte's or the banks or whatever, or like working with the land and with people, then it's that option that I am seeking to enable more. However, I could not say, no, don't go and work for Deloitte if that's really what, you love the numbers so much and so on. But it would almost be like you go and experience the casino, you go to Vegas, go and have bump your head, fall over, or whatever, lose your money or whatever, and then but you already have you said the baseline family, the baseline kind of experience of the alternative, such that if you want to dial back and go, there is there is a community, there are opportunities, and I think this is where as I feel like people have been talking truth or seeking to go against the narrative for a long time, so I wouldn't, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, but I do feel like we're coming to a point where it's going to the gap between the two is going to become wider and wider and harder to bridge. And when for those people who are coming, who said, you know what, I want to step out of the system, for them to come into a community or for them to be there be options, particularly for our children, to say, well, because your children might say, Dad, there's nothing that I can do here. How do I make a living? How do I survive if I do not go to Deloitte's? And I'm saying, well, that's where we can, as the elders, begin to create options that are feasible and viable to take those talents that these children have, people have, and flourish.
Hmm. Yeah, and you know, I think I feel like there's stuff opening up now from raising the kids at home and doing the homeschooling. Like po new possibilities are opening up, like the possibilities of family business, for
Mm.
example.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was very much conditioned with the idea that it's like you get 18, you leave home, and you go to university, and you go off to the other end of the world, and all that. But and I'm not against. Obviously, I get it. Like I was a very international guy. I had wanderlust. I wanted to go out and see the world and travel and everything, and music enabled that for me. Um, but I've also learned that it's actually that whole agenda to basically separate children from their families, get them over to the other end of the world, get husbands away from their families as well, like off to war, or there's a whole conspiracy behind that as well. You know about this, like the
Yeah.
Jesuits, they would do this to basically get the children away to the other end of the world, get the father off to the war or whatever, and then there's just the mother left with the whole estate and all the money, and then they would then move in on her and then convince her to give all her money to the church to be forgiven for her sins, right? And this was a whole, there's a whole, like, they've written about this in their books and everything. And so now I look at it, I'm just like, damn, was that a big scam? Is it actually better for families to maybe like stay together and try to work together rather than just separate and spread themselves out across the world, so
I like
yeah.
that. My father grew up not far from you. Actually, he's a Yorkshire. He came from Yorkshire, my old man, and he was separated from his father and mother in the war. The youngsters were sent off to the countryside. They were breaking up the family. Definitely then. And my sisters, one's in Johannesburg, one's in California, and I'm here in England. And we've been separated since I was went off to the army, basically. That was national service, by the way, not choice. And I very much agree with with working to bring to recalibrate or to reconnect the family, the father, the mother, the child, the Trinity. And uh, what I would say though is that we should also be encouraged to go out and have a look at the world. You see, because I think that this world is our world. It was created for us by us. This is like me saying to a child, look, never look at your body below the navel. It's like, but that's your body, and you should know your own body, right? And I think that the earth is an extension of that, and we should know our own earth. I meet people who've never left their tiny habitat, and I know with the 15-minute city agenda, there's more people hoping that that will
Yeah,
happen, right? But and I think that that's to their detriment.
yeah,
That they haven't had the opportunity with family or without, but to go and explore, go and see the thing, but with the hope that, or then hope that you will bring a wife back, or you will come back to the nest, as it were, and we will continue. So, coming back to your point about the family business, I love that. And I mean, you guys are naturally teachers, I know, but there's obviously other things in music that you could all be working on together.
yeah. And the children are well, the compliment that we get about the children most is that they're just very easy to talk to, and they have a very you can talk to adults very easily. And this is what we see with the school children, not so much, right? Is that school children actually have a hard time talking to adults or looking them in the eye and this kind of thing, right? Because they're constantly subjugated by teachers, and it's a different
Authority.
teacher every 45 minutes, right? So
Yeah,
you
yeah,
got you got like eight different bosses a day, right? Plus your the head teacher and the
mm,
guidance teacher, and you
yeah,
got all these adults that are constantly like putting you down, and you're put into essentially a pen with other children all of the same age as you.
yeah,
So your interactions become more with peers rather than with adults. But with the homeschool kids, because they're actually around adults all day long,
mm,
they pick up adult modes of conversation, more mature conversation style, and they just understand things better. So when other adults speak to them, they're always like really impressed by
yeah,
how well they can just dialogue
yeah,
with other adults. I mean, we got even just simple things, even like ordering food in a restaurant. I know teenage kids at school who still can't even look at a waiter and tell them what they want. They have to get their parent to like order it for them and things.
yeah.
It's just, just things like that. Like this is, I think, the important like basis of the foundation of your life, right? It's like it's communication and trust and
Being
these
the
things. I think school
authority,
just knocks it out.
being the
Yeah.
authority of your own life, or the author of your
Yeah.
own life. And when we give away authority, we give away Thor's gold,
Hmm.
because AU is obviously the symbol for gold,
Hmm.
and Thor is, well, we know Thor is the god of, uh, like I forget exactly, but the word author comes down to gold Thor. I think that it is your own gold, and when you give it away, when there's another authority, whether it be in science, religion, government, um, then you're giving away your mentor. You're giving away control of your own gold, which is, why I think the
Your
word,
authority.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly, man. That's it. And we noticed this with the school because we had to put our kids in school. We put two of them in school and then took them out.
Mhm.
We're now answerable to the school, right? They have to check up on us to
Uh,
make sure that we're looking after our kids properly, right? Because they now, if we'd never put our kids in school to begin with, then there'd be no checkup, right? It's like
yeah,
you're the authority. But if you put them in, then take them out, then the school still feels like it's the authority
yeah,
and that they have to check on you to make
yeah,
sure you're looking after their kids appropriately, right? So,
yeah,
so it brings in some, friction there with the government. We're just like, stop talking to me as if you're in charge of my kids
yeah.
because
You're
you
not.
ain't.
You're not. Good for you. We had a run in with them at 1 o'clock in the morning, banging on the door during lockdown, and three coppers, and we want to see this child. Why? It's 1 in the morning. Well, we want to see he's got two arms and two legs, is literally what the guy said to me. Standing well closer than the social distance that they were meant to be maintaining. And because of that, it led to like that local authority. We were in Bournemouth at that time. That local authority trying their damnedest to get me to engage with them, to get me to contract with them. To the point where we were on a tour doing flat Earth stuff. I think this is 2023 in Gloucester, and they phoned me up, and the woman is in Bournemouth. I said, I'm in Gloucester at the moment. I just want to see your child, even if it's just in a park. I'm in Gloucester. You're in Bournemouth. I'll come up to Gloucester. I swear to goodness, they, are trying so dang hard. We had the fallback of there's no birth certificate, so you've got no contract with this child, right? You don't have any agency. But I see this. I think they're trying to steal your gold. They're trying to steal your authority all of the time. And so it's an opportunity to stand in your own authority when they come. It's like a gift saying,
Yeah.
that's not your place. That's not your
Yeah,
place.
yeah. It's an opportunity to be who you say you are.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some battles I've decided I don't like. The one with the um, driving without all the paperwork. It happened a year or so ago that the police took the car off us, and that was uncomfortable mostly for my little boy. And so I have righted that so that I don't want to come on their radar ever. I just want to
Yeah.
kind of cruise through do my thing, live in honor, um, and raise my child. This is what I said to them at the door, the coppers. I said, n he's what 6 years old or whatever at the time. No one cares about this child more than me. You didn't even know he existed until a few minutes ago when you got this call, right? This is my, had people being called, because I know that there are people harming children in the world. It is unfortunate. And I said to him, look, I recognize that. And were you coming on the basis that the neighbors had said they'd heard screaming and shouting and all this hurt stuff, that would be fine. But on this occasion, it was that we'd called up the hospital for some advice because Andrew was feeling a little bit uncertain about him being unwell. He was never normally unwell. So we'd called up the hospital. And after the end of the conversation, I said, you know what, we're not going to bring him in today. If he's still unwell tomorrow, we'll bring him in. It was February, coldest night of the year, blah, blah, blah. And I said, we'll put him to bed. And then when doctors turned up an hour later at the door and said, we want to see this child, I said, no, go away.
Mhm.
And then, of course, as I said, 1 o'clock in the morning, that the old Bill turned up at the door. Um, but yeah, so anyway, I admire that, and I think we can create our own businesses. We can create environments in which our children can dip in or dip out of something, or then start to produce their own music, and do something amazing.
Yeah.
Go on. Did you want to say?
No, go,
I
go on.
wanted to I wanted to come back to I wanted to offer you a thought which you may have already spoken on um, or thought about or have a different way of me thinking about it. I heard you talking about with Steve Faulkner about how at the end of the burning process when we take a piece of wood and we burn it down and we get the black and then eventually we burn it more and we get to the white is part of the alchemical kind of cleansing.
Mhm.
I love that. I think that that's partly why that's what we're here for is perhaps a cleansing. But I wanted to, before I got into kind of detail on that, I wanted to ask you about this thing that I say to people. Can remember I did study just a few months of intensive listening to all the quantum physics, the best 60 symbols or the best Fermilab presentations and stuff like that for many months. Um, and I started to develop this thought that what if the when we're taught about a black hole in mainstream science, we're taught that it's infinitely dense, or it's it's like a cube is like the weight of a planet or whatever. It's like, and so for me, I started to think, well, if it's all light, if our whole construct is just frequency, vibration, or light, and that light can get condensed, pressed down through a black hole, say, to something that becomes material. So it's light that's now squashed into a tree. And that tree, when I cut it down, weighs 200 kilograms and I dry it out and it weighs 150 kilograms. And then I put it on the fire and it's a good fire. And in the morning, I've got 500 grams of ash. And I say to people, so what left the fire? Where did that 150 kilograms of wood go? Because you can't measure any weight.
Hmm.
Eh? It's just light, heat, maybe some sound that has emanated from all of that weight. So if I was to go backwards, I would say, well, then there was never any weight. I mean, I measured it as weight on my scale or mass but but I am of the view now that the tree that I see, and it was helped by my ayahuasca experience in 2015, but the tree that I see is actually just, oh, I put my hand up and this thing's flipped my camera. Um, so so the tree that I see is just light. The wood that I see is just condensed, squashed energy or light that in for the ether it doesn't weigh anything.
Hmm.
Um, so that for me, the burning of the wood is like the reverse process of what created the wood. So so there was this condensation of light, packing of light through water or whatever to make the tree 100, 200 kilograms, and then the breaking down of that bond to create the fire. But there is no weight that leaves the fire. It's just heat and light. So what are your
Well,
thoughts on that?
I think the key to thinking about that is like volatility. So you have volatile essences, which are material, it's material stuff, but it's has the potential to turn into fire, right, and go back to the air, right? So like fuels, for example, are volatile. They can be set on fire and
Yeah,
then it'll disappear, right? Just like the wood. But of course, all the wood doesn't disappear. You're left with ash, and the ash is the fixed. So you have fixed and volatile are like two sort of polarity in alchemy. So the volatile essences in the tree will burn and turn to fire and go back to the sky, but the fixed elements in the tree will come down and turn to ash.
mm,
And then once you have that ash left over, then that can then be purified through stages. So when you first get it, like it's black first of all, right? But then if the heat continues, it eventually turns white, and then the white ash, potash, can then be purified through dissolving and coagulating, right? You've heard this solvet coagula. It's like
yeah.
the alchemical dictum. So dissolve it in water and then evaporate the water off.
Mhm.
And then that fine powdery ash becomes more crystalline. Like every time you dissolve it in water and then coagulate it, it becomes more crystalline. And actually, if you continue that process, maybe do it like 7, 8, 9, 10 times, dissolve and coagulate, it will eventually become metallic. So it goes from a powdery
Yeah,
ash to a
yeah.
crystal to a metal,
Wow.
and that's how you create metals, right? Like sodium is from soda. Soda is like a fine white ashy powder.
Yeah.
It can be made into sodium crystals or soda crystals, and then from soda crystals it can be made further into sodium. The same with potassium, magnesium, all those like alkaline earth elements, right? They're salts which
Yeah.
are purified into crystals and then purified into metals. But they're non-sovereign metals in the sense that they're not stable. They're highly reactive, so
Okay.
like sodium will explode on contact with water and stuff like that, right? So they're not like the real metals like gold and silver
Mm.
and stuff. They're, they say non-sovereign metals. Like they're not able to hold their own. They'll just quickly react with anything, anything that comes along, right? Um, so yeah, I think that was a good thing with alchemy because we're taught in atomism that like all the substances are like different types of atoms. You got this
Yes.
metal here with this atom and this one here
Yeah.
with this atom. You can't change one atom into another and all this kind of thing. Um, but yeah, metals are made from salts, from rocks. They take the
Right.
rocks, they break them down into a fine powder and salt, and then they then work it until they get it into a metallic form. Um,
Do you mean the difference, just so I'm clear, because I have been studying the periodic table again over the last while with my young son, although I've been saying for the whole time that, this is a sort of one way of interpreting the world. I don't necessarily agree with all of it, and I think we're on the same page with that. Do you mean the metals like potassium that are going to burn like that rather than iron ore? Do you know what I mean? Because my mind is that iron ore and gold ore are little tiny little flecks inside of a rock that they crush that down, heat it up, and they can extract that. That exists, that is real, right?
Yeah,
Or
to some extent. So yeah, so the question is whether the metals actually exist in nature or not. And some like gold, for example, you can obviously find pieces of gold that have grown in nature,
yeah,
in the
yeah,
rocks and stuff. But with the other metals, it's not so
right.
common. Although I have seen copper, I've seen natural copper where it's actually like, perfectly smooth, polished,
Really?
like
Yeah.
chunks of copper, like in
Wow.
rock and stuff like that. So it can happen. But I think generally, like how the metals are made, that the ore is rock. It's something that's not metallic at all.
Wow.
Although I understand we're told that the metal atoms are inside
Yeah,
the rock, right? And
yeah.
and then you've got to extract the metal atoms from the rock. I think what's actually happened is something more like cooking. It's like so I say like flour doesn't contain bread, right?
Yeah,
There's no atoms of bread in the
yeah,
flour. The
yeah.
flour has to be processed into bread
Gotcha.
through the application of heat and water and other things. And so
Yeah.
metals, when I looked into them, like mostly that is how they're made. So they start with a non-metallic powder, and then they work it through, purification through
Al
fiery processes
Alchemy.
yeah, through alchemy. Yeah, they make
Yeah,
it into a metal. Yeah.
yeah.
So
Wow. Wow. Well, I'm grateful to learn that. I had other ideas about it. I used to have these ideas because it's a little bit like the virology stuff, which I know you've kicked out of bed, but as have I. But it's a bit like that where they're saying that there's a thing in there, a physical thing, but the only way that they can actually demonstrate that is by putting a whole lot of alchemy together and go, oh look, there's something now. We can show you something, right?
yeah,
It's a bit
yeah. I
like
mean, it goes through a lot. If you can look up like how copper is made or things like that, and it's a lot of processes. At least seven processes that it goes through from the rock to
Mm,
the metal. And it's really destructive, like fiery processes like acid washes, and then
yeah,
pulverization, and various things,
yeah,
and then they get like a pure white powder, like talcum powder, very very thin at the end, and then they melt that and then set it, and that's how you get your metal, like your aluminium or silver or whatever. So
yeah.
yeah,
Is that why, people say when they do the colorful sign writes with the sky writing, they throw all that white powder up in the sky. Some people say it's aluminium. Is it going to be? Would it be then possibly that same pre-cooked powder that you just described?
yeah. So this is another thing. I think I'm going to do my next presentation on this. So because it turns everything upside down in terms of chemistry, right? If you're thinking that the metal atoms are in the powder,
Mm,
right? So take magnesium, for example, right?
yeah,
Everyone takes magnesium supplements, right?
yeah,
But they don't actually have magnesium in them, right? Magnesium is a metal, and there's no metal in those supplements, right? They're
right.
powders. So what powders are they? Well, they'll call them magnesium citrate, magnesium glutamate. There's like seven or eight different ones that they use. And if you look into how those are made, well, those are made in a lab with chemical reaction, right?
Oh,
If it's natural magnesium, it's probably just come from sea salt. Um, you know, but otherwise you're taking an industrial chemical that's being passed off as magnesium. But you've seen magnesium, right? It's like a metallic, it's a
yeah.
soft metal. It's gray, silvery in color.
Mhm.
That's that's not in the pills.
And that's what you're saying about actually it's not there, but once with the alchemy of the cooking and the final stages, you're going to bring about this thing that we can now call magnesium.
Yeah, it has the potential to be
Yeah.
transmuted
Yes.
into magnesium.
Yeah.
Um, But then there's not even any evidence that the body's doing that.
No.
So like if you open a corpse, you're not going to find like strips of magnesium in there.
Yeah.
You're
Or,
probably
or
not going to find
a,
any metal at all, in
yeah.
fact.
Yeah, or a fire, or a kind of because I know I love how I listened to one of your talks on the humors, the four humors, and I remember that from when I was young, people talking about that. So I'm really fascinated, and I know I've got to do quite a few more hours of listening to your amazing talks. But I do think that in terms of understanding body health, that if we understood those four humors and the wet and the dry and the hot and the cold, I forget exactly, but so we aren't turning that powder into magnesium in our bodies is the conclusion. Yeah.
I don't believe so. I mean, there is, of course, there's the idea of metal, mettle,
Ah,
right?
yeah.
So
Mhm.
metal is like our
Yeah.
our metal, right? Our strength, our resilience, our ability to handle challenges and trials and stuff like that. And
Honor McLeod.
yeah, we sort of strengthen our metal by putting ourselves into the fire. And
Yes.
it's an interesting
Yes.
parallel, right? Because that's how they strengthen metal. Like when they make swords, right? It's like they
Yeah.
they put the sword in the fire to to transfer the heat element into the sword, and then they hammer it, bam, 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 which is also the heat element. The fire
Mm.
element is the hammering as well. And all that like strengthens, it adds that kind of martial energy
Yeah.
into the sword to make it a more effective weapon. And so in the same way, the trials and tribulations, the fires that we are put through in our lives, if we stand up to them and we overcome them, then that increases our metal, like our strength as human beings. But it's it's a quality. It's more like a quality rather than a substance. It's like, yeah, it's not that we're actually growing metal parts in our body, right? It's that
Mhm.
we're developing the quality of metal, so the quality of strength, the quality of resistance to corruption, like gold has
Tenacity.
resistance to corruption, like all this stuff. Like,
Sharpness.
yeah, we're developing these qualities, but we're not exactly turning into robots made of metal. Do you know what I mean?
I'm with you. I'm not an Elon Musk fan, and I think that's where
Yeah,
that actor is taking people is towards the Iron Man
yeah,
robot kind of thing.
yeah.
I wonder about the sword thing because I love the idea that we are here to sharpen the steel, strengthen the sword, become the captain of the ship. But your analogy is fantastic, and I know I will use it again. But well, as you were talking, I'm thinking, okay, so the sword also has to go in the water, and
Hmm.
it also has to be in the air.
Yeah.
It is earth because it's the metal, the fire, the air, and the water. All of those four components are part of the process of making it, as you've said, like the steel might need to be honed if it's too much in the air, too much in the water. It's interesting now. I've never said this before because I often talk about us having to be in balance. If we stand up straight and put our arms out, like we look like the Christian cross, and at the center is the earth, the heart, and we can be too much up here in the clouds, in the heavens, or too much down in the trousers, or too much left wing, too much right wing. It'll be the other way around. And yet we're meant to be in this, and that we know from Chinese medicine that we're either born with like a significant amount of earth, fire, water, predominance of one, and so we need to kind of seek out the other or come into balance and flow with the other three elements. And I feel like, and the conversation is kind of coming naturally around to this, is that this is where we get to um, once we've attended to um, understanding that out there has been mistaught, um, and we seek some kind of, because we're intelligent minds, we seek some kind of better grasp on what's going on out there, then it comes back to the know thyself. No, the know thyself, like this is all about not out there, Mars. This is all about heart. It's all about you being at the center of this. So in terms of tempering the steel and sharpening the blade and becoming the captain and the master of your own vessel, um, what would you say is the kind of what, what they've obviously deceived, obviously we've been deceived. So why would they have done that, and what should we do about it in terms of the
Yeah. Well, I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah. Why all the lies? Why the deceptions? And, I'll admit one of the hardest conspiracies for me to believe is that there's good guys in power. Do you know what I mean? Like white hats or whatever. Like the idea that there's actually some good people that have power that are actually doing good work. I find that the hardest conspiracy to believe because it's just when you look out to the world, you just see so much evil and corruption. It's hard to believe that there could be anyone good working in the background of these things. But um, I don't
can I
know. I,
just
I think I think
before,
there probably is.
sorry to interrupt your thought, but so
Yeah.
hold that thought. But
Yeah.
in 2018 or 19, I fell on the floor in my kitchen crying and saying to my wife, "No one's coming." That kind of because we are trained that someone, Jesus, someone, Elon, they're coming to save you, when actually there isn't anyone to save you. You've been thrown into a fire and you have to save yourself.
Yeah.
So sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to offer that.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of the awakening is you're really bringing back that responsibility for saving yourself, and instead of waiting on some external savior, for sure. But so but then the more I learn about like the occult and stuff, I sort of wonder if there is part of the deception is actually to cause the smart ones to wake up. I wonder, and that's just a theory. I don't know. I mean, maybe they're deceiving us because they hate us and they think we're just cattle and, we're basically bugs and they don't want us knowing their secrets and yada yada. Or maybe it's a test and it's designed in such a way that the most discerning and the most smartest people will actually use the deception to figure out the truth,
Mhm.
to lead them to truth, and then we'll start getting these shining lights, which is what we see. These like authentic people who are just uh, genuinely trying to figure out what's true, and they're sharing that with the world, and they come on like beacons of light now in the world, and like would those people have came online if it wasn't for all the deception, right? You know what I mean? So there's like a silver lining, like with COVID, right? It was terrible, of course. Like COVID was terrible, but we found all these new friends. All these people revealed their true colors. Actually, when you look at it, with it all, you're like, actually, I'm in a much better place now because of this terrible thing. And so I wonder if maybe a part of the reason for all the deception and occultism is actually to, bring out help people to grow but although most people will just buy it hook, line, and sinker, just like little fish, taking the bait. Most of them will take the bait, but
Yeah.
some of them will look at it and think about it, and yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
I
those
don't
will
know.
be, well,
Maybe.
those that are not taking the bait, to use the fishing analogy, they will go on to grow to be, a bigger fish. And obviously we're trying to break from this sort of ego sense of entitlement and all of this sort of thing, because I have a clear sense that we're all in the same ether. We all come from the same creator or essence, whatever that is. Um, and so this sense of superiority and so on is to miss the point of the divinity that we all carry. And when you have, as you have, and I have with the ayahuasca or the DMT, um, had a brush with the divine, had an encounter with the divine, then you realize the magnificence of what's there, what we come from, and what we represent. And so, trying to set aside some of our what the Bible calls the seven deadly sins, to try to manage them or master them, the greed, the avarice, the pride, all these things. I think this is what we're here to do. And like you, I feel like the test would not be a test if you were given all the answers at the front.
Yeah, that's it.
And the learning for my child to climb a mountain could never happen if he didn't start walking some flats, some hills. Now we're going to halfway up the mountain, blah, and this is a progression, maybe in one lifetime or multiple lifetimes that we begin to make that walk up the mountain. Um,
Yeah. Sorry. Well, yeah, I was just gonna say, so with like, you take nuclear physics, for example, right? So that was obviously what I did. And you go to school, you get good at math, chemistry, physics, get the good grades, go to university, do 4 years of all this undergraduate training, tons of exams, more exams than I can even count.
yeah,
Passing the exams, all right, you prove that you're good at math, you're good at physics. So you go and do the PhD in nuclear physics. Another 4 years of intense, research, really super complex. And then come out the other end and, frankly, still don't understand how a nuclear power station works. Couldn't build a nuclear bomb if I tried. Do you know what
yeah,
I mean? Like, in
yeah,
about 8 years
yeah.
of nuclear physics, and I didn't understand any of that stuff. And,
And
you
where
know,
would you go? I mean, if
but
you haven't seen that in your PhD, where does a man go to become the guy who builds the next nuke? Italy,
yeah.
maybe?
But then when you look at it from afterwards, looking at it as an adult now, I'm like, well, if you had the secret of creating energy to blow up the whole entire world, are you going to teach it to any old school kid who just got, good grades in maths and
Yeah,
physics? Of course you're not, right? So it's and not that I was even seeking that knowledge, but it's just
yeah,
that looking in retrospect, I'm like all that nuclear physics, and I couldn't tell you how a power station works, couldn't tell you how to build a bomb. Well, of course, I realize now that actually the bombs in the power stations don't even use nuclear physics, right? They just use conventional explosives and engineering. So, the whole thing was just a total diversion from reality, but it was also brain training, right? So, like, I had very rigorous mathematical brain training all that time. Now, it wasn't applicable to life in that way. But look at me now. It's like actually that training has come back, basically to bite them in the ass because they trained me hard enough to be able to debunk
yeah,
the science that they were teaching me. You see,
yeah.
so that's why I felt like compelled to do this. Like I couldn't run away from it. I couldn't escape it. I'm like I have to talk about this stuff now because I have a PhD and I'm able to criticize it. And not enough people are criticizing the science they were taught. So
Well, you're definitely probably the most credentialed guy I've spoken to in science, and I love it. And I think yes, you have the tools. They've given you the tools to be an extremely powerful, neo, like a system breaking,
critic, yeah,
yeah, system breaking
yes,
kind of guy.
yeah, a critic of science. Yeah, I certainly. But it should be as well. I mean, I was very scared to do this in the beginning. Like I mean, as I say, I learned about flat Earth in like 2016, and I was just like, I cannot talk about this publicly, or my life will be over. You know what I mean? My career will be over. No one will speak to me anymore, and that did kind of happen to an extent as well. But eventually the truth just, with COVID and stuff, it just became so like I realized there was nothing else I could imagine myself. I have to authentically speak my truth. That was the only way forward that I could conceive of during COVID. And so I wrote the book as a way of sort of, just breaking the ice and, getting it all out there into a complete sort of story and putting it out, and then people can make up their own mind about me. Uh,
I've got an airline pilot friend who I won't name, but he worked for an international carrier in Australia, and it was only the COVID that forced him out of his job because he wasn't going to take the needle. But he'd been in flat Earth for years by that point, and he's still to get to the point where he will come and talk about it publicly. Um, and I think that he's a very powerful because given that he loved flying, from and became a pilot at 18, he was like that was his life kind of journey, and here at 35, it's like it's all over because but I think as I've said to him, I think in time all of that will come back around. But you need to be speaking your truth. You need to be, as part of this, for me anyway, I also had the same vacillated. I'd become a little bit of a name in the military veteran circle because of publishing my book. I was getting invited to black tie events, to talk about my battles, blah, blah, blah. And then I started saying, you know what, the 9/11 thing doesn't ring true anymore. And here we've got some evidence that we're not on a globe, and everything just dried up. But I knew that
Tumbleweeds.
I had to take the I had to take that step. And I think that's why they like to try trap people into their jobs. How many people we must know of doctors who have gone along silently with the last 5 years because their paycheck, the policeman, their paycheck, my retirement fund, all of these things is predicated on me staying silent and not talking out of the shop. And so it's very frightful. And perhaps it was to you were probably always, in my view, always designed to take the path that you're on, but perhaps because you weren't sort of in the midst of academia, like in a, professor at the uni, and it's like, hey, Steve, do not talk about this stuff, otherwise your tenure is over. You might have gone, okay, I'll keep my mouth shut for a little while longer. But I'd like to think, as I've met you, I believe that you are one of those people who is going to have to speak the truth at whatever cost. I was like that as a child, and it upset my family. And now, as an adult, I've upset my family because I've gone, guys, this is all a big scam.
Yeah.
And why it doesn't, when I first started talking about flat Earth, I thought, within 6 months, all my friends, everyone I know, will be a flat earther because it's so obvious. And then of course the discomfort of wow, now they think I'm suffering with PTSD. They wrote to my wife, four of my school friends, and said we think that he's having a flash. It's gone bad for him. He needs to maybe get some help. These are my best friends from school.
Jeez.
And so, and I'm now have got to the point after 10 years of this to recognizing that it's not necessarily like I want to be on a separate path from my friends, but we are not necessarily all designed to take the same mountain path in this lifetime at this time. But if any of them says, listen, I want to come on the hike with you, jump aboard, I got some water, maybe a spare pair of boots, let's go. Um, and
Yeah,
and
I like
and
that.
that's the journey that I have to be on, and I want to encourage those who follow my work to take for themselves because I come from the trenches of flat Earth, like in the street fighting, kind of arguing with people, blah blah blah. A lot of the people who follow me are kind of drawn to that combat, and I only took that on because there was no other way from place for me to go and talk my stuff. I didn't have a following, or I didn't have credentials, or I didn't have anything else, but I knew what I knew. I'd done the research on the globe. I'd done the research on what we know about the Earth as much far as we could. And I was able to go out and talk about that. And now I want to, in my own maturation process, take myself and those that are hearing me to go, what about the inner journey? What are we doing to still you've been put in the fire. Now, how do you temper it? How do you cool that down? How do you kind of bring the whole blade into perfection and sharpened and honed and all of that? And that's
Yeah.
really what I want to talk about.
Yeah, and I think it's that authenticity, right? Just being just speaking honestly from the heart, and facing the music that comes from it, and as I say, like now I can, I've been on a lot of podcasts, done a lot of presentations and stuff this year, and I'm not getting as much shit as I was getting like last year, for example, or like the year before, because I'm continuing to put stuff out. But yeah, when you first come out of your shell and start saying things for the first time, like the big things like I don't think we're living on a spinning ball anymore, then you got to be prepared. You're going to get shots fired at you, and it could be for quite some time. You could end up getting abuse for months for that kind of thing. But you you just gotta keep going, keep speaking, and find the others.
This is the
Um,
tempering. This is the
yeah,
tempering. This is the honing. Because I think that we are meant to, and I'm not in any kind of honestly, someone listening in thinks, oh, I'm being aggrandizing and bandstanding or whatever. It's not about that at all. I have absolute reverence for whatever's the ether is, whatever the consciousness is, whatever is beyond this material experience. I have great reverence for that, and so I live my life in honor of that. Um, but I do think that we have a role, and if we are to conduct ourselves, then we need to have sharpened our steel, and we will do that by putting ourselves in the fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was one or two more things before we end off, Steve. One, I wanted to ask you to consider whether the remaining ash or potash isn't the 1% of the universe that we can see. So when we burn the wood, see when they look into the universe, because I know and I'm on the same page as you, is that atomic physics and galactic physics or the heliocentric physics are just the micro and macro of the same thinking. Um, Ball, rock, hard, hot, space, nothing, and then other things kind of going around it and all that. The micro and macro, same thing. So if it's the 99% or thereabouts that they say is the dark matter, is that the is that the 99% that I burnt off in the fire? And the 1% is what's left that they can measure, that they can test, that they can see, or is that an oversimplification of the 99%?
Not sure I understand exactly what you mean by that. I mean, the dark matter, I think, is, they're hinting at ether there when
Yes.
they talk about dark matter,
Yeah.
saying because they're saying it's an invisible substance that fills
Yeah.
all of space.
Yeah.
Well, it's like we had that idea long ago. It was called the ether.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, I'm not sure the
Okay,
connection
so what I
between.
was trying to say is that when we look into the cosmos, we see 99% of dark matter, which I agree with you is what I believe is the ether. And
Or
of
rather,
course,
we,
I
we
don't.
don't see it
Yeah,
because it's
yeah, yeah,
dark.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We see 1%. And so the same is true with the atom, right? Like what we see, what we believe is the atom. And of course, I've watched the guys in the quantum physics class say, well, we don't know exactly where it is, but we can plot with 97%, accuracy that it's going to be somewhere around here. And but so for me, that's a lot of open space. That's the 99% of
Uh-huh.
not 99% of it is not physical. And so when I burned the tree down, and I got this little pile of potash after purifying, um, is that the 1%? And is the 99%, because it was, as I was saying, like, is that the expression of the ether? And it's just returning to that, you know,
Yes, yeah. Life is ether. Yeah. So like when a tree grows or a plant or whatever, right? I mean, it's earthy. It's coming
yeah,
out of the ground. It's
yeah,
solid matter, but it's not pure earth because pure earth would be dry. Okay, but
yeah,
plants have water inside them. They are, bendy and flexible, right? So they've got water inside them. They've obviously also got fire inside them as well. They're taking the heat from the sun and using that for the growth, and they're reaching up into the air and they're
yes,
uh, photosynthesizing with the air
yeah,
as well. They're taking in carbon dioxide, putting out.
yeah,
So the life itself is ether, and it contains the qualities of all four elements within it. And then, yeah, when you then chop that down and dry it out, you're then taking the water out of it. So the wood becomes then basically earth and air and fire. So the fire would be the volatile, the
mhm,
essences in the wood, the
yeah,
part of it that's capable of burning.
yeah,
The air would be, of course, the air, like the hollow holes and everything that are in the wood. And then you're left with the earth element, which is the carbon or the ash, which is non-combustible and
yeah,
non-volatile.
yeah,
So yeah, the burning separates all the essences that were in the life
yeah,
back to fire, earth, air, and
whatever.
water,
Yeah,
and you're just left with the earth, which is the ash. Um,
I love it. You
the
know,
other
I
stuff's just gone.
I took the word ether a few years ago and played around with it, and the word breathe hides the word ether.
Mm.
God breathed life into us, and so you get the word ether be. You also get the word earth within the word breathe. You also get I also saw while I was because I'd written it down. You can get heat from the
Yeah,
word breathe. Um, and then and then I did something. I did something. It's like I did something with the word water, and I was playing around with it because the word what like a James Watt, for water, being the currency. Um, and but if you take water as would have been spoken by like the Gaelic kind of community, they could have said water like water with an H in it, yes? Because we say what with an H in it. So why not water with an H? And once I include the H and I take that W and turn it into an E, I can make the word ether from water.
Yeah.
Just just saying.
Yeah. I love with the etymology and the anagrams of the words. Because you have with ether as well. If you rearrange it, it spells the ear,
Ah,
the ear, and because the ear corresponds with the ether. Because you have the nose, which is the air, smells the air. The eyes, which is the fire. The mouth, which is the water, and then sense of touch is for the earth, and then
wow.
hearing is for the ether, and ether is an anagram of the ear,
Wow.
which is
Or
pretty cool.
ether. Yeah.
Ether, yeah.
Yeah. I like
And
that.
yeah, water as well. Yeah, I looked into that in my book as well. So like Dick and the watt, just WOT, not WATT, which is I hadn't actually thought about it that way, like power and current,
Yeah.
currency, like you're saying. But yeah, WOT is that means to receive. So like when we say what, like we say what.
Ah,
Where it's a question where we're wanting to receive something, we want an explanation. You know, what is going on, what is happening,
yeah.
and water is the great receiver.
Right.
Water is able to receive the fire, right?
Yes.
All the frequencies
Feminine.
are absorbed by water. So like water is sort of like the great seer.
Mm.
And it's called the sea, right? It's called
Wow.
the sea, and it sees the fire or sees the sky. If you think
Wow.
the whole water's looking up like a giant eye looking up at the
Yeah.
heavens. Uh,
Wow.
yeah,
We've sometimes speculated whether we aren't on a giant eyeball. So I like that.
yeah,
I like that. Um,
yeah. Oh, and the eyeball, yeah, it was what Darwin said was the eye, wasn't it? The eyeball, like basically discredited his whole theory of evolution. You know, he reckoned he could explain everything with evolution except for the eyeball, right? That's like the
right.
deal, yeah.
Right. Wow. So yeah, my last one thing then would be on so I mean you may have studied astro cartography. I
A
don't
little
know.
bit, yeah. I started looking
Okay.
at that recently. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we I've only studied a little bit. I can't claim to be very knowledgeable, but say 7 years ago, once Andrea had got my wife got over the what does it matter if the Earth is flat? She started studying astrology much more closely and from a flat Earth perspective. And then we came across this astrocartography and so on. And so she has her own um, thoughts on the astrology. And for me, the 12 zodiac signs are like the 12 disciples and the 12 disciplines of you, the Christ. You are the hub of the wheel with the 12 spokes of the zodiac around it. And it's interesting, just as a side, that it's 12 Apollo guys who step on the moon, the feminine. So it's the 12 again. And so where I was going to go with that was that we know, and she does people's birth charts. We know that it's much more than, the newspaper gives you about what's your sun sign and so on, because there's a moon sign, there's a rising sign, and then there's all the big wandering stars, the Saturns and Jupiters and Mars and so on. These are relevant to you, the individual, depending on where and when you were born. And we see now that the Germanic countries are far more Saturnian in their kind of astrocartography than, say, the Samba South Americans, who have and I can't tell you what it is because I'm not well versed in it, but I am fascinated by the Saturnian element because the world since the last 400 years has been dominated by Saturnian energy. The Europeans have done all the conquesting, whether it be through religion or economics. They've done all the and they've infiltrated themselves and their Saturnian methods. I think coming up in South Africa, where we were given apartheid by the sort of the British becoming, it just a process of initially the British wrecking South Africa with two wars, the two Boer Wars at the end of the 18th and beginning of the 19th, sorry, 20th century. 1897 or whatever, 1902, somewhere around there. Their biggest ever contingent of soldiers was to the Boer War, for a few, farmers and maybe sitting on some gold or whatever. But they then give to the white people the opportunity to run this country until such time as they have black folk gone through their Saturnian system who are now capable of running just like they did with India, running their economy, running their democracy, if you like. Um, so we see that as very Saturnian, and we think that Saturn. It might be, and it might be slightly different to what you were saying with Steve and the Falconer in the conversation I'd heard you say with that, and one has to be very, for me anyway, willing to hold a number of different competing theories simultaneously. But the idea that Saturn was actually originally known as Satan.
Mm,
Have you heard that? And so Satan being the opponent.
hmm.
And so we do see that the Saturnian system, introduced by the Europeans, perhaps, is like an opponent. It is going to offer you all sorts of inducements to come into its circus, but it's also going to offer you the test that will raise you. Because if you're a tennis player and you're just playing in your own little village club and what have you, your game will be good. But once you go to the city and you're now up against other players of similar caliber, now you've got to raise your game. I guess you saw this in academia. Now you've got to raise your game. You're no longer in the high school. Now you're in like proper. And I know you went to Guildford, actually.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
when I heard you say that, because atomic, I love that you studied atomic physics. I'm going to repeat that many times in future on the street, I can assure you. But I was in Guildford a few months ago. I've been there a few times in the high street with my banners and what have you. And I had this guy raging at the top of, you'll know Guildford High Street, raging at the top of his voice. You could have heard it all the way up and down. This guy doesn't believe in this. This guy doesn't believe in that. I won't trigger anyone by saying what had triggered him. But but I think that we're the opponent is actually meant to test us. So in a way, we should meet these challenges that this world has set us with kind of like joy, in the same way as your steel would meet the fire with like, yes, this is what I need. I need cooling now. I need the air. I need the pounding. I need that. I need that, please, because I want to be the sharpest blade that is that either my higher self set out to do, or is at least the opponent or the opposition to the Satan or Saturn running world.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. I mean, the idea of Satan is well, you say the opponent. I've heard the adversary, right? So just like the universal adversary, right? So that's how sort of the devil is behind everything that's like adversarial to you. But it's all, we're given the choice.
Yes.
As far as I can tell, the way it works is you're given the choice whether to get in bed with the devil or not. And this is obviously in the music industry a big thing, right? With selling your soul.
Yeah.
It's like, you get into the music industry because you love music, or at least that's why you should be into it, right? But then you're given this offer. It's like, well, if you sign this thing, you can make all the music you want. We'll give you all the money, and you'll get all the success and yada yada. You get offered everything. But then if you take it, then you then lose the ability to like actually decide for yourself like how you want to express yourself. You're now
In effect, like a
expressing.
doctor, you're going to have to be putting needles in people. You're going to have to say the words of
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And that's, and yeah, it's horrible when people sell their souls. It's horrible to see what like becomes of them and everything. But yeah, it's like they had to sign on the dotted line though. Do you know what I mean? So like who really did it? Was it you or was it the devil? It's like you signed on the dotted line. But it's slippery though, because they have, well, so as I understand with the music thing is like evil can't create anything good. And that kind of makes sense. It's like if you're evil, how can you make something good, right? Obviously, you can't. So you need to get good people to make stuff for you.
Yeah.
So you need to find like young talent that's bright and keen, but is naive enough
Mhm.
to they don't know about how evil the industry actually is, and so they'll quite happily sign their life away to have the success and have the fame, but then you're just used like a cigarette butt, just rinsed out and used by the industry. And then of course then after you die, they're going to make millions off your music after you die as well. So I think the record industry can see that far ahead, right?
Mhm.
Young artists are like flashes in the pan. You know what I mean? They come up, they make some great songs. You take those songs, then they die off, and then you profit from those songs for the rest of forever.
Mhm.
So it is quite satanic, like the industry, but music itself is not satanic, right? Music is like the rules of vibration, the rules of harmony,
Yeah.
and the world works by this. These are like immutable rules of vibration and harmony, and music is the application of that. And that's how music as a theory is able to produce an infinite variety of songs. Every time someone makes a song, it's a different song from
Mhm.
ones that have been made before, right? From the same rules, the same
Mhm.
theory, but
Mhm.
different songs every single time. So it's actually one of the most powerful and perfect scientific theories there is, with many, many fruits.
Alchemy.
But the industry is the industry is controlled by the big man,
Yeah.
and yeah, if you're not careful, you can lose everything.
It's like
It's
food. Food is nourishing in the right conditions. It's nourishing, but it can also be tainted and made into something that's toxic sludge. And the
yeah.
same, I agree with the music. You were at the gathering. There'll be another one next year. I'm sure you've heard in Spain. But that was all in 432.
Hmm.
And we know
Yeah.
that the 4/4 they did, they know this. They know that they can change the frequency, a tone a little bit, and also mess with the recipe.
Yeah.
Because music is, yes, we are vibration, and with the right vibration, we can feel amazing. We can also be taken, and I know you've had a slightly hedonistic youth as well. You can be taken down paths like I was, of, like it's all about the kind of the uppers and this and the that, and you know, but now I don't need that. I can just be in that, and I would say that for our friends who made this contract, if you like, with the devil to talk it in those terms. I have said, the word soldier is could be broken down into soul dire.
Soul dire. Yeah.
Yeah. And so us guys who go off to kill our brothers and sisters, we are forsaking something in that. But I'd like to believe that in the same way as the church says you can come in and do Hail Marys and all that kind of thing and it's all good, I believe that we can rectify our own ship. We can immerse our sword back into the fire, back into the water and air, and pound it and bring it back into perfect condition. I'd like to. That's how I operate. So I'm not keen on the NPC kind of title. I think that I know people have been neutered, have been muted, have been kind of dulled. The blade is no longer sharp. I know that. But I'd like to think that we all come from the same metal, or we have the same metal to be alchemized.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, alchemy is a doctrine of transformation, and there's an old art piece that has it's in French, but it says at the bottom like even the most incontinent of men can be transformed into a sage. And
Yeah.
I love that. So like incontinent, we usually think like means like you piss yourself or whatever, but more generally it just means like you don't have control over your lower nature,
Ah,
your lower
mm,
flesh, right?
mm,
And so yeah, it's just saying, and even the most incontinent of man can be transformed into a sage. And so
mm.
it's yeah, there's always a path of repentance. And I believe that as well. It's like repentance is just like turning around when you realize you've been going the wrong way, you turn around, you go the
Yeah,
other way,
yeah,
and just keep going, keep going away from what you were just doing. And I believe, yeah, God does provide paths of repentance. and
Well,
for us if
well,
we've.
I'm going to offer you a thought, which is maybe wrong, but again, if I stand up and put my hands out like this and my legs slightly apart, I'm making a five-pointed star. And the penta is a five-pointed star. So repentance is for me to bring my star back into myself. That's
Hmm.
what I think repentance is.
Oh, I like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
good one.
You
Yeah,
know,
I heard that.
some people describe us as the six point, and I know with the alchemy of the two triangles overlapping, you're creating the six-pointed star. But I like that repentance is this idea of us because it is coming back to bringing ourselves back to or remembering, pulling the members of your body, back together.
I
Who
like
we
that.
are.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
we have been the body, the family, the community, and the individual have been ripped asunder by the centuries of misdirection.
Hmm.
And I offer to people that this lifetime is perhaps like a day at Disneyland, and you've got the ticket for Disneyland. What are you going to make from it? Are you going to sit in a popcorn stand all day long? You're going to on the teacup ride, or are you going to explore a bit more this time? And when this lifetime is over, you'll take your memories and back with you, or your experience, or your growing, your ability to handle the biggest rides and be what you intended, your soul set out to be.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%, man.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that's probably a good point to end this one today.
Yeah, I
Um,
really enjoyed that, Dale. It's been a great conversation. Thank you very much for reaching out and setting this up.
my pleasure. And I hope, obviously, to see you again. We are, we've been talking about putting an event together in England for like a gathering for people to come together, a little bit like the way that we did it with Alex. Um, I'm just not sure I can pull it all off before April of next year, but certainly the September event is that's going ahead. Tomorrow, Alex and Shelley are going to look at an amazing property that we found to host the event at. It'll be like it'll be really, really nice if we can pull that off. Um, but I would love the opportunity to come and meet up with you again, like personally at some point in the next year, if possible.
Yeah. You,
Um,
you're in England, yeah? You,
yeah, currently, yeah.
yeah, you're not in South Africa. No.
No,
I was
not at the
thinking
moment.
you're down south. What, Bournemouth?
No, I'm actually in Cotswolds at the moment.
Oh, okay. Nice. Yeah.
We move around a lot because we haven't had a home for 6 years, so we bounce around from place
Yeah.
to place, and I do house pet sitting and stuff to
Uh-huh.
sort of make that work.
Well, yeah,
Um,
if you're up in Scotland, give me a shout.
yeah, and other than that, I mean, I would I don't know, maybe in 6 months' time or whatever, we could have another conversation because I feel like yeah, I've listened to a lot of your kind of thoughts, and so there's very little that I disagree with, but I think that I can continue to learn. And I think that we are meant to be coming together. Um, we've been ripped apart, and if we are to build something for our children in the future, it'll be through collaboration with like minds.
Hmm.
So I'm hoping, I'd like to. I'll post this in the next few days. As soon as I've kind of got it edited, I'll post it up. But I would love to talk to you more, but obviously I can't make it longer today for your sake or mine or people listening.
No worries. And actually, just remember, did I also hear you're going to, there's an event in September in London that you're good?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. The
Yeah,
one
I
that
think I'm
you
going to be there as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
talking there again. Awesome. You were there last year, this year?
Oh,
Or
the Illuminate and Elevate.
yeah.
Yeah,
Or
so it's
you
the same.
yeah.
Yeah, I was there this year. Yeah, yeah. And I think I'll be back next year. And I heard you were on the lineup as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I just
Cool, man.
yeah.
Okay.
Fantastic. So
Yeah.
we'll definitely see each other in September and we can take the conversation further. Um there's also one coming up called uh what are they called? Oh man, slipped my mind. Sounds Beautiful. I don't know if you've heard of them. Sounds Beautiful. Dave Weiss did a presentation, Martin Leaker did a presentation there 2 years ago, and we in the flat Earth community um, weren't very well received by the organizers, to be honest with you. And but this year the organizers re and they didn't have anyone, I don't think, from the flat Earth community last year, and this year they've reached out to say if I'd come and talk on that. And but actually, yeah, I didn't realize you were at the Illuminate Elevate thing because which is fantastic. But I obviously come at the electromagnetic nature of everything that's happening in the ether from my non-academic research. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've listened to, as I say, some of the best professors and stuff on quantum and on all sorts of subjects, but I've come at it from my own layman's sort of perspective. So it's always nice to have someone who's got like the deeper academic side of it to go, okay, well, let's balance this with that and so on. Um, I'll tell you as an aside, I've been arguing with, or disagreeing, I should say, more accurately, with flat earthers for years now. I went on a sh show with a guy who somehow doesn't think the earth is flat anymore, a guy called Jeranism. I was saying back then, like, that the 8 inches per mile squared isn't correct. And I haven't yet I haven't yet been able um, to get anyone to really think about why I say that. And the reason why I say, not obviously with the water's level and so on, there's no debate about that. But this theoretical construct that we live on a globe. In fact, this guy, I'm sitting in someone else's office. Um, this guy, oh shit, has this on his desk. Oh. And what I say to people, pretty clever actually. It's somehow turning in there. Um, what I say to people is that on a sphere, football or whatever, oblate spheroid if you like, there is never a point where it bends less than anywhere else.
Yeah.
So if I claim that where I'm standing right now, the first mile is only 8 inches, I'm invoking relativity. I'm saying that the Earth is at the top. I'm at the top, and everything is going to begin gradually. And I understand the mathematics of taking a straight line. Where's my globe gone? I understand the mathematics of taking a straight line and then measuring the drop between my straight line and the ground. Yeah, I understand that. I don't have an argument with that. But there's a lot of flaws with that. One is that there are no straight points on a globe. So how do you assume a straight for beginning? So that's to say that the first mile this way and the first mile that way are both 8 inches for me. But over here, where you are, there's curvature in the hundreds of feet, hundreds of meters, miles. However, if I visit there, now it's 8 inches again. Because now I'm like, okay, now do you know what I mean? I wherever I happen to stand, I create a zeroing or a relativity, a position of relativity, saying that everything is centered on me, which I think that the sky, the lights center on on in a relativistic way to the observer. But the idea that the globe could take on some lesser amount of curvature because I happen to be the one measuring it right now. I was talking to these two German students in Bournemouth a few weeks ago on doing some street activism, and this guy he brought me out a little kind of round thing, and he said, "Look, if I'm here and I'm sailing there." Then, and then I said, but when you're there, what happens? Are you going to go back up? And is it going to be 8 inches from the first mile that you leave, say, France, and you go back to England? It's going to be 8 inches. But you claimed when you were leaving England that the last mile on that journey would have hundreds of feet of curvature. It can't be both. It can't be both. You don't need to answer this now. Just food for thought, Steve, because
Yeah.
you have a thoughtful mind and you can maybe come back to me and say, well, this is why it wouldn't be that. But for me, if I was to say take out just the dial of my clock, wall clock, and say let you cut any section of that rim of the wall clock, can you tell me where it bends less or more than any other place on that clock?
Yeah, I know.
It's got to always be consistently bending at the same. Now, I would make any allowance for, well, we have continental shelves and, and on those it's not. So it's more, it's got to curve more on the ocean to account for the fact that it's kind of flat across England kind of thing. Average height of England is like 55 meters above sea level. Most people don't know that. Um, and London's 40 meters above sea level and 50 miles, whatever, from the coast. I know you guys in Scotland have a little bit of mountain, but we don't have any down here in England really to speak of. So yeah, just as an aside, as a throwaway on the way out of this conversation, is to say, you know, how is it possible that they can make the claim of 8 inches per mile squared? And it is my contention that the 8 inches per mile squared was seeded in. If you want to control an organization, you got to lead it or whatever. So even the Samuel Rowbotham stuff, all going back to Zetetic astrology and um, I don't want to name any names in the current context, but certainly that these ideas that I was first seeded with when I got into flat Earth 2015, 16 was that the sun was 50 miles across and 3,000 miles high. Now we know that that can't be right because the observations that we make do not match with that. So that was seeded in as an error or misdirection. The 8 inches per mile squared, and I have spoken to thousands of people in the street are on this. The 8 inches per mile squared is for most people, so insignificant that they would, yeah, well, 10 miles, that's a long way away. I can't really see. I'm already losing the ship. So maybe there is already some curvature in there. And I'm not, you know what I mean? It's not a lot, 8 inches per mile squared. Um, I mean, obviously it mounts up, but in the first mile, almost, wow, that's why I can't see it across the horizon. Whereas, whereas I say to people, well, if it's as simple as I'm going to, I'm going to travel 12,500 miles from top to bottom over the skin of this globe, but the distance I'm going to drop is 8,000 miles, the diameter. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would apply if I was using a cue ball, a football, a globe. It's exactly all balls, spheres have exactly the same, it seems, ratio of of you're going to travel sort of um 1.4 or whatever the distance is through the diameter, you're going to travel like 1.4 times that or 1.5 times that over the outside of the thing, no matter the size of the ball. And
Yeah.
therefore, I simplified it because I'm a simple guy to, well, that means that I'm basically going to travel 1 kilometer forward and 600 meters down, 1 kilometer forward and 600 meters down. It's always going to be doing this. It's never going to take a flat for me.
Hmm.
And it's never going to say, well, just because you're standing here today, Dave, we're going to make this zero and then eight, no, 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 like that. And last thing, one of the things that we don't do when we do the maths, when we do the maths, is that we don't allow for the ship nose to dip down. You see, the ship is not doing this, the plane is not doing on a globe, it has to be making constant downward adjustments, which you cannot achieve with a triangulation.
Yeah.
So these, I think, Steve, are tricks again of relativity and mathematics that have been used to dilute the argument against the globe.
Hmm. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I'll have a look more into that, the equation and the geometry and stuff. Um, yeah, I mean, I always think with the Earth level thing, it's, you think of the people, right? So on the globe, like you say, if you're standing on a globe, that means you're at the top of the world. No
Mm,
matter where you are,
mm.
everybody else in the world is beneath you. And they're all facing different directions, right? So their heads are all, pointing in different directions. And I just think that that's just absurd. And it's like clearly everybody's head is pointing up and everyone's feet is pointing down. All the human beings are all in the same, nobody's that way, nobody's this way. It's like we're all head up, feet down on the
Yeah.
same level. And yeah, I think the observations, the observations show that. I mean, because I went to a bunch of conferences this year. I met a lot of flat earthers. I think I did 6 events this summer,
Wow.
and so because a long time I was just myself as a flat earther. I maybe knew like one other guy, online or something, and then you learn more. But this year I got to actually meet loads of flat earthers in person, and the number one reason why people switch to becoming flat earthers is because of observation. You know, everything else is secondary. Like what the sun does, the outer
Yeah.
space stuff, the NASA stuff, like all of that is secondary to the observations they made with their own eyes, and then that equation you're talking about, the 8 inches per mile square, they compare it and they realize they can see much further than they should be able to, and that's what did it for me as well. Um, so I think so people come at me sometimes with like these really technical questions are like, what about this? Or, this thing that happens. And I'm just like, well, what about it? It's not going to change the flat earth position because it's based on mountains of evidence and observations. And
Yeah.
this one little technical thing, whether we have that
Yeah.
conversation or not, isn't actually going to change the position.
Yeah.
you're going to need to come up with something better.
The common tactic is that they don't want to. This for me is though, and so when I if I am engaging with people who are, it's like measure the curvature. If you're, what all these other things are really distractions and saying, because we don't know, we were happy to accept that outer space and the space people told us, the quant. I know you studied a bit of the Neil deGrasse Tyson stuff, but astrophysics, but
Yeah.
theoretical. But what these things are kind of like distractions, and so whilst I was happy as a believer in space and NASA and all of that, I was happy to accept that, well, what we theorize is this and this, and I guess with the light and the way the lights work and the distances, we're still in the world of theorizing, but when it comes to the observation of distances over water or over land even, it kills the 8 inches per mile squared. And I'm exactly the same. I grew up near the sea. I heard the 8 inches per mile squared, and I was like, hang on, hang on a minute. I know maths, and I can tell you that I was seeing things a long way further than this curvature formula allows for.
Yeah.
Even at the 8 inches per mile squared. So I know it's not like it's not a complete like killer, but for me, if we could mathematically and scientifically and intellectually say, listen, this 8 inches per mile squared was always a deception. The truth is that if we lived on a never-endingly bending, no, and people will always say, but it's no blade, so it go, that's just word salad, and it's meant to be like 12 miles thicker here, then a little bit squashed there. We're talking about an 8,000 mile ball, right? And so if we could say, wow, it's actually a constantly bending sphere according to the theory. And that sphericity requires a certain amount of, just like your clock, it has to keep going around, 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 around. At the second hand is going never changing. It's never changing the amount of curvature that it's allowing for on every step around the clock. And so why are we allowing something different in terms of what we argue is wrong with the globe? Because they might have given us yet another misdirection just to
Yeah.
harm the truth from coming out.
Yeah, that's possible. I mean, that was, with the astrophysics, one of the reasons why I found it actually so dissatisfying as a subject to study is because all the numbers were just given from nowhere. It's like you can't calculate the distance to the sun, you can't measure it, but you're given it. You're
Yeah,
just here it is. Oh yeah, the guys NASA figured it out. Yeah, we can't tell you how they did it. They used some space probes or something, but basically they figured it out, and it's exactly 864,000 kilometers in diameter, or something like that.
yeah,
And so that's why I got bored of astrophysics, was because we were just being given all these facts and figures,
mm,
but no means of verifying them, calculating them, or measuring them.
right.
And I thought this is just not satisfying to do anymore. So I switched to quantum physics, which is a bit different. It's a bit more logical in some respects, but it still suffers from the same
Yes,
problems of you can't falsify it, right? You can't
yeah,
check it for yourself. Yeah, it's way beyond the realm of. anything you could ever reach or
Yeah.
see or whatever, you know. So you're just taking it on
Yeah.
trust. You just got
Yeah.
to take it on trust.
I felt like when I was listening to those professors, and so I would say into the computer, like, if only you knew there was an ether, if only you understood that this is a propagation within or a perturbation in a medium, that starts to make what you guys are teaching make a lot more sense. Um, but anyway, I've really enjoyed this conversation with you, Steve, and I will, at the earliest possible kind of thing, I'd love to, in a few months' time, have you back on the channel, talk some more, and I will look forward to seeing you at least in September.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dave. It's
All
been a
right.
pleasure. All the best, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Thanks again, bud. Cheers.
Bye.